This is another one of the Never Again Live podcast series with Meir Halevi Weinstein. We all know him well from the past several months or years of his active intervention with Zionism and fighting for Jews and fighting against anti-Semitism everywhere. We have a special guest with us this evening, David Schoen, who's an attorney at law. He's been with us once before when we were discussing the Ben and Jerry's boycott. Today, our focus is going to be more on Roger Waters and other items happening. But just to briefly reintroduce David Schoen, he's attorney at law. He was a lead counsel in President Trump's impeachment defense team. He was also is the lead counsel in a variety of lawsuits with American victims of PLO terror attacks. He's a recipient of the Israel Migdal or Tower of Light Award, as well as most recently, and proudly I'll say, he is now the director of the Zionist Organization of America. So without any further ado, I'm going to get Meir on the screen, and he'll chat a little bit, and I'll be back with you guys later.
Well, thank you very much. Let me just ask everyone who's going to be joining us tonight, if you could please share this with the various groups and pages that you're part of on social media and the different platforms that you're part of. We'll reach a lot more people, we'll have a stronger effect. Tonight, we're going to be talking about a very serious issue. It's Roger Waters. He's planning to do a tour in North America, in a number of cities in the United States and a number of cities in Canada. And his message is clear. He wants Israel gone. That's what he wants. He's involved with people who support the PFLP, Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. We're going to be connecting the dots today. But before anything, every show, we first start with a few words of Torah. So here we go. Last Shabbat, we read in all the shuls, and this is pertinent to the discussion tonight. We read in all the shuls last Shabbat, Parshas Chaya Sarah. The Torah portion dealing with the life of Sarah. It's actually the burial of Sarah that takes place. And in this parsha, this portion, Avram purchases Hebron, purchases the burial plot for his wife Sarah. And in Hebron, this past Shabbat, thousands of Jews went to Hebron to spend Shabbat there to commemorate the purchase of Hebron by Avram. Everything Jews do is by the book, legal. We're given a promise from God for the land of Israel, but we make the purchase totally legal. When the Zionist movement started, the founders of the Zionist movement purchased land in the land of Israel, everything by the book. Those purchases are not just disputed by the BDS and the anti-Israel crowd and the pro-Hamas and pro-PFLP crowd. They don't even consider us to be Jews. They don't recognize our history. They don't recognize even the validity of what it says in the Bible or the transactions that took place. Earlier today, Roger Waters had a live video. And on the video, he discussed many issues as he was bashing Israel and denigrating our claims to Israel and not acknowledging our rights to Israel at all. But in the video, he went on in the early stage of it, talking about the Balfour Declaration. Now, I think it's important that we look at this short clip of Roger Waters with the reference to the Balfour Declaration. And then we're going to read out the Balfour Declaration because his message is completely false and rooted in anti-Semitism. Again, he denies our history. He denies everything about the Jewish people, our claims to Israel. Doesn't acknowledge it at all. I'm just Wondering if our doctor in the studio can show that clip.
I can show that clip. And again, for those of us who aren't familiar with the whole Roger Waters boycott, his anti-Semitism and anti-Judaism and anti-Zionism, basically, I'm going to show that clip certainly, and I'll show the Balfour Declaration. And I'll give you some time to pause on it to read it. But I'm going to show a couple of other clips I put together of Roger Waters as well, so people who are new to this whole predicament are more familiarized with the situation. So without any further ado, I'm going to play the video and I'll pause it periodically through it. It's just a few minutes long. So tonight this is a quick little tribute to Roger BDS Waters. And he's about to embark upon his anti-Semitism tour. So I thought, I think I'll buy another Pink Floyd album, When Pigs Fly. And it's a perfect thing, When Pigs Fly, because as you can see during this concert, he let pigs fly. And not only are these pigs flying, from an actual concert of Roger Waters with a pig flying with the Star of David on it. It can't be more offensive. I wonder if he put a Star of David, instead of that, put a Muslim sign floating around, how long he'd get away with that. So without any further ado, here's Roger going to give us a little history.
Let us examine that argument. Did Hamas start it? When did it start?
He can't even say it. He can't even say that there's a conflict against the Jews, against Israel, the Zionists. He refers to it as it. I think that says...
How we understand history is shaped by when we start the clock. If we start the clock at a moment when rockets are fired from Gaza into Israel on a certain afternoon, that is one history. If we start the clock earlier that morning, when a 13-year-old Palestinian boy was shot dead by Israeli soldiers as he played soccer on a Gaza field, history starts to look a little different.
Of course, we're talking about a Gaza field with missiles set up behind it to launch at Israel, but he leaves those important characteristics out of his little spiel.
And Israel is... What's interesting is that the settler colonial Zionist movement in Israel didn't start really until after the Second World War. Well, it did.
Well, did it or did it not? I mean, he's claiming that Zionism didn't start, but then he realizes all of a sudden he has a break from his senility and gives a little more history.
With movements in the 19th century, as we know, Zionism has its roots with whatever his name was back in the 80s.
Whatever his name was Theodor Herzl, for those of whom are wondering. I think he knew that also. He has trouble saying certain words, but you'll see which ones he has no trouble saying.
1990s. And obviously it was gathering steam a little bit through certainly the First World War, when Balfour wrote the letter to Lord Rothschild.
Balfour, by the way, was a prime minister of Great Britain. He also served as the admiral commander of the British naval forces. He passes by him as this is some schlump on a bench who happens to have an opinion, kind of like Roger Waters thinks he is. He's comparing himself to Lord Balfour, which in and of itself is kind of offensive, to say the least.
Saying, do you know what? I actually printed it out yesterday and I've left it downstairs in the kitchen. So,
well, did he leave it downstairs in the kitchen, or did he forget to bring it up, or does he realize what he's about to say has nothing to do with his short-term memory, that he doesn't even know what he left in the kitchen?
I haven't actually got it here in my studio with me, but I can remember it. Basically, he said this government...
he says he can remember it, but what we're about to see is he really can't remember it.
Looks with favor upon the establishment of a Jewish state in Palestine and blah, blah, blah. But there's a second bit of that sentence. It's in the sense that, save that it should not interfere with the political or civil or religious rights of the indigenous people who are already living there.
I'm not sure where he found the indigenous people clause, but I looked pretty carefully at the original document available online. I couldn't find any mention of the indigenous people, but let's let Roger continue.
Okay, that is the Palestinians, my friends. So that half of the...
Oh, sorry, got to pause. It doesn't say Palestinians, nor does it say indigenous people. But Meir will give more detail on that. I don't want to steal his thunder.
Balfour letter to Lord Rothschild is very often forgotten. We should remember it, because those rights, all of them, have been interfered with by the Zionist settler colonial movement.
So, Meir, would you like to actually read what it does say?
Well, the writing is small on the screen, so I could get it.
I have a copy in front of me. If you'd like me to read it from the copy,
Go right ahead.
Okay. You know how embarrassed I am in front of an audience, so I'll
Right.
try my best to get through this. But on the original document dated November 2nd, 1917, it reads as follows. Dear Lord Rothschild, I have much pleasure in conveying to you, on behalf of His Majesty's government, the following declaration of sympathy with Jewish Zionist aspirations, which has been submitted to and approved by the cabinet. Needless to say, people like to say, oh, it's, just Balfour talking. Well, it's not. The cabinet agreed on this. It's kind of when Congress and the Senate agree on something. It's not one senator or one squad member saying something absurd. This the actually agreed on. And I quote, His Majesty's government view with favor the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people. Okay, let's process that for a moment. It's a national home for the Jewish people, not the indigenous people or the visiting people or the Jew-hating people, but for the Jewish people. That's us, by the way, for anybody paying attention. And will use their best endeavors to facilitate the achievement of this object. Okay, it's being clearly understood that nothing shall be done which may prejudice the civil and religious rights. Okay, again, it doesn't say political there, although that's what is being inferred by Roger. The civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities, again, living in the Jewish state that they're declaring. The existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine, or the rights and political status enjoyed by Jews in any other country. I should be grateful if you would bring this declaration of knowledge of the Zionist Federation. So before we go on, and I turn the floor back over to Meir, just want to complete a little more about Roger's blatant anti-Semitism.
Because these people, AIPAC and ADL, and the other extremist Jewish lobby organization, or Israeli lobby, I shouldn't say Jewish. Jewish lobby organization, or Israeli lobby, I shouldn't say Jewish.
Oops.
Jewish lobby.
You notice, he just say it once, he says it several times, and this is another part of his speech.
Meir forbade them appearing on the show because some Jewish organization, some Israeli.
I mean, come on, what's he thinking?
What? And Biden is still going, oh, I support Israel and anything to, oh, what, you support them in this genocidal removal of people from their homes? How would you like it, Joe Biden? Our olive trees, from the Jordan River to the sea, and from Myanmar to Lahore.
Now, for me, the saddest thing is that he ruined a fantastic song, a fantastic hymn, first written in 1901. And I was going to go through the list of people who covered it, but it always has almost as many covers as the award-winning song, Hallelujah, which has over 300 covers. This comes pretty close. We Shall Overcome, I'll add, was Martin Luther King's favorite song. He loved that song. It was sung at his marches, at his funeral, at dedications memorial, and Roger ruined it for me and for a lot of other people. And Roger might not realize that Martin Luther King Jr. said Israel's right to exist as a state is incontestable. That's what the song means. And when people criticize Zionists, they mean Jews. They talk about anti-Semitism. That's not me speaking. That's Martin Luther King Jr. Or in his own words,
the whole world must see that Israel must exist and has a right to exist and is one of the great outposts of democracy in the world.
My Jewish brothers and sisters said to me amid anti-Semitism anywhere, and we don't need your support. I would still take a stand against anti-Semitism because it's wrong, it's unjust, and it's evil.
Well, I said I was going to take a minute to go over anti-Semitism, but I did it in 30 seconds, so we're done. Meir, back to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Gary. Okay, so let's bring on David so we could discuss this. David, you're very familiar with the Balfour Declaration, Israel's claims, the history of Israel. There are Jews always living in Israel. We've had temples there. We've had kingdoms in Israel. And our rights, just like that, by Roger Waters and the BDS, is being evaporated, non-existent. The only ones who were there were Arabs, according to Roger Waters, and Jews just came from Europe and used force and kicked them out or committed genocide. Balfour Declaration, totally corrupt. What's your response to this anti-Semitic clown?
Yeah, on the one hand, we can dismiss it. On the other hand, it's very serious stuff, and especially current these days with the hate squad we've got in Congress. They have the same narrative with our moderate peace partner, Mahmoud Abbas, same narrative. He's written a doctoral dissertation on the subject. It's very scary because, you have a younger generation coming up and they don't know who to believe, and they hear public figures saying these outrageous, outlandish things. I had a debate the Arizona bar a couple of years ago, and they had a law professor from the University of California debating against me, and he just made up stories. He said he talked about the town where settlers from Gush Katif moved and have been killing Arabs left and right, and that's where the last pogrom against Arabs occurred and all that. I had to say to the audience, he just made up everything he said to you completely out of whole cloth. Not one word that he said was true. But the audience said, well, listen, he says one thing, this guy says another. They don't know who to believe. These are historical facts that are now being distorted. There's just no question that the Jews have the greatest claim to the land of Israel. They've been in the land of Israel from time immemorial. There's just not a question about it. And this idea that things started in 1967 or 1948 or whenever is just an absurdity. And they try to capitalize on pogroms against the Jews that expelled Jews from their homeland throughout the years. And they rewrite history on that also. So he's a clown, all right. He's a very dangerous clown. He's a sick person, Roger Waters. He's a liar. He's an anti-Semite. He's the living definition of Natan Sharansky's 3 Ds, delegitimization, demonization, and double standards. That's everything that he says about Israel and the Jews. But, as Gary showed in the clip, he lets it slip because he's the clear and perfect example of trying to couch words in terms of anti-Zionism when he really means anti-Jews. He's an anti-Semite throughout, inside and outside. He's tried to defend himself on this. I don't want to talk too much, but tried to defend himself. He gave an interview to Haaretz and elsewhere, which he hits back, and nobody can label him and so on. Nobody has to label him. Just listen to his words. He speaks for himself. He calls a group like the ADL, a radical group. I wish the ADL were a little bit more radical. But even the ADL, and certainly the Simon Wiesenthal Center, has called him up in no uncertain terms. Called him out.
When I think about I reflect on the founding of the State of Israel in 1948, and I think it's the epitome of anti-Semitism. There's so many cases I can give the epitome of anti-Semitism, but what I'm referring to is that 3 years after the Holocaust, that there was the Arab declaration of war against the new Jewish state. And it was a call for genocide. They said, we're going to kill all the Jews. We're going to throw them into the sea. This is all documented. This happened. Israel was attacked from all sides, and Israel won against the odds. Israel won. And to take the position that, and that is the position of the BDS, that we have to continue this war, that is the height, in my opinion, that is the height of anti-Semitism.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think that's why, Sharansky actually wrote a piece specifically identifying BDS and tying it to his 3 Ds. And there's no question about it. It fits every category. BDS right now, I'll tell you a story. About 2 weeks ago, I had been hired, I thought, I was asked at least, to represent the Green Party in Arizona, wanted to challenge a provision on constitutional grounds, provision of Arizona's voting laws. So it sounded very interesting to me. I thought they were right on the issue, and I agreed to do it on a pro bono basis. I then got an email from them saying, well, we've decided not to go forward with you. So I thought it was strange language to use. So I wrote back and said, is this something about me or is this something about the case? They said, well, we have to be candid. One of our members, actually a director who happens to be Jewish, saw that you're a Zionist, and we cannot support in any way Zionism. We support BDS. And so I'd never had that experience before. It was a sick experience. So my answer to that was to become the chairman of the Zionist Organization of America.
Well, congratulations on that, because now not only are you a skilled lawyer and a lot of people know of you, and you've been very involved in the Jewish community and advocating for Israel in legal cases, but now you are, like you said, the chairman of the Zionist Organization of America, and you could do a lot more.
I hope so.
To combat this vicious anti-Semitism that's going on today.
Yeah, they have a powerful voice in Mort Klein. I hope to bring a little value to the organization also. But listen, this Roger Waters phenomenon is a serious matter. It's the kind of thing that he's certainly entitled to say what he says, but we're entitled to object to it. We're entitled to ask people to boycott his performances. We're entitled to ask people to reject his message everywhere that he gives it and to be there rejecting it. Some people would suggest, you should ignore him. But I think in his case, he has a following from Pink Floyd. And if you ignore him, people might well accept what he says is true. It's important for people in his own business. Some other rockers have come out and said, this guy's an absurdity. He doesn't speak to us. He's attacked other artists. When Madonna performed in Israel 2019, he accused her of supporting ethnic cleansing and apartheid and all of the kinds of things that he calls Israel. I think by and large, reasonable people are just sick of the guy, but he doesn't go away.
Right. Earlier today, I mentioned he did a live video today, and he was working in collaboration with a particular BDS group. We could show the screenshot through the show of their Twitter account, and they were promoting it. And but this particular BDS group, in the past few days, has been promoting an organization called Defense for Children. And in fact, they mentioned that on the video today, the live video today, earlier today in the afternoon. And Defense for Children has been listed recently by the government of Israel, one of 6 organizations that were recently listed by the government of Israel as terror fronts for the PFLP. Now, that's something that we should be more concerned about, because if Roger Waters is going to perform in a variety of cities, in arenas, and he's going to start promoting, like, these are great groups, the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, and other organizations that are associated, that are on the terror list. I think, well, I need your opinion on this as a lawyer, but does that cross the line a little bit different from just the issue of speech? And does that enter into promotion of support for listed terrorist organizations?
I think it does, and I think it may well, and I think it does, frankly. The PFLP, as you say, is a listed terrorist organization, certainly recognized by our State Department as such, and it's illegal to give any material support to the PFLP. And material support is defined very broadly under the law. It could be giving money, it could be giving proceeds from the concert, but it could also be promoting their message. For a lawyer, even, it can be representing them, which is very problematic. I've had a good deal of experience, unfortunately, with the PFLP. They were behind the bombing that killed a couple little girls in Israel and Karni Shamron several years ago, the Shatsky case. And I actually took the deposition in court of the leader of the PFLP, a disgusting terrorist named Ahmed Sadat. And they've been behind so many terror attacks that have killed so many people around the world, many Americans, always in cowardly, brutal attacks from the suicide bombings and that sort of thing. They killed an Israeli cabinet minister at the Hyatt Hotel. Just their life is violence, and they'll team up with any other terrorist group that they can.
Interesting that you mentioned that leader. Oh, here's the screenshot of the group Palestine Deep Dive that had the presentation with Roger Waters today. There's the screenshot. They're promoting the Defense for Children International Palestine. And we actually have a little bit of video that we could show that would expose who these people are. They're just a front for the Popular Front for the Liberation of Israel, of Palestine. And in fact, the video really speaks for itself. It's unbelievable when you look at who is in the leadership of these organizations. The video was put out by Joseph Schoen, who's in England, that runs an Israel advocacy organization there. Does phenomenal work. It's a very short clip. And if we could, I don't know if we could show it now, but we'll show it soon. Another point is that, so this organization, Samadat, or Samadin, who has been listed by the government of Israel as also as a front for the PFLP. Earlier today, they advocate for Ahmed Sadat, like you mentioned his name. They advocate for him strongly. But earlier today on their Twitter account, they shared a video, a message from the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, stating clearly in the video, and we have that, and we'll show it soon, we'll show the screenshot too, support for the Iranian Revolutionary Guard to work together with them to fight against the United States of America. So it's coming full circle that these so-called human rights organizations, civil society organizations in quotations, these are the groups that they support. And this is the message that's going to be at the Roger Waters concerts. We have the video right now to expose that innocent children group. Is it coming on? This is going to be really interesting.
I'm going to show first this video. As I get them downloaded, I'll show them. They may not be in the order that you request them in, but I'll go back after the video's all done and finish this episode. I'll put it back together so it looks like it was done correctly the first time. But
Okay.
Here we go.
So political pundits in the West are like, what's going on? Why is Israel boycotting human rights NGOs? Well, because those human rights NGOs have been linked to the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, a terrorist organization. You have to hand it to the anti-Zionists. They've mastered the art of naming their organizations. Take the Defense for Children International Palestine. Who isn't for the defense of children? Except numerous members of their staff are linked to the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. Like this guy, Abu Maria. This is literally his martyrdom poster from where he was killed and how they honored him. And this was posted on the PFLP website, where they called him a comrade and a leader of the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. What does that have to do with the Defense for Children? This is a terrorist organization that murders children. Tell you what, it reminds me of Orwell's 1984, where the Ministry of Truth is actually the Ministry of Propaganda, and Jewish Voice of Peace actually want to destroy Israel, and the Defense for Children has actually been designated a terror organization by the Israeli government, and yet people still don't do their research to look into these organizations.
So David, what do you saw the clip?
Yeah.
Defense for Children.
Yeah, he's exactly right. There's one after another of these organizations. You know, they euphemistically call the group that pays payments, social security payments to terrorists, the Martyrs Fund. It's run by, always has been run by the widow of an arch terrorist within the PLO. Became an enemy of Arafat at some point, but a longtime PLO member. And so they continue to fund terrorists and terrorist families. They call it a Martyrs Fund. They say they're providing social support. They're, of course, providing incentive for terrorism. These families now are making more money than, certainly far above the average wage for people who actually work. It goes to the families, it goes to the prisoners. And so these euphemisms have been around and continue to be around, and people buy into them. If you get hit with, like the fellow said, if you get hit with a charity solicitation for a group called Defense of Children, pretty tough to say no. And again, who's anti-child? And so you might give, and you might be giving to a terrorist organization, which may mean you're committing a crime.
It's amazing that this past summer, Hamas was exposed for running these summer camps for kids where they were training them to be terrorists. Defense for Children is completely silent for that. I would mention also that UNICEF is completely silent on that. The UN is completely silent on that. The Red Cross is completely silent on that. But this is fact. Training camps, terrorist training camps for children in Gaza.
Right. And it's weapons training, it's propaganda
training.
training. It's training that the end goal is the obliteration of the state of Israel from the map, and so on. And this phony notion that, well, we're dealing with moderates with Abbas. I mean, Fatah, his organization, has been at the heart of many, many, many terrorist attacks. The executive committee for the PA and the PLO is comprised of arch terrorist groups, some of whom are illegal under U.S. law. The whole thing is a farce. Still today, we have members of Congress like Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib and their compatriots telling lies every day about what's going on and supporting people who have been directly involved.
Schools out in Gaza, and for thousands of teenagers here, this is how the holidays are spent. Preparation for the next conflict with Israel, handling firearms and physical training. Their enemy is very close, just a few hundred meters away at the border. There's every chance they're watching, so the tutors at this summer camp like to keep their faces covered.
We don't want war, but if it is forced upon us, then we are ready. We are training the next generation of fighters who want to protect their homeland.
The camp is run by Hamas, the militant group which governs Gaza. Their hardware is on display, over and underground. One of the reasons the last war went on as long as it did was that Israel was trying to destroy the network of attack tunnels that Hamas had built from Gaza into Israeli territory. Well, Hamas very keen to demonstrate here that their tunnelling strategy is still very much a going concern. As part of their training program, cadets rehearse a cross-border raid to kidnap Israeli soldiers. It's a threat which Israel takes seriously. Its army says it's destroyed several tunnels so far this year. And on the Israeli side of the border, among veterans of the last war, there's a sense of inevitability about the next one.
The situation on the other side has not changed. No seaport, no open borders, and international recognition. So they don't have anything to lose.
Israel maintains an economic blockade of Gaza because it fears that Hamas will use imports for military purposes. But a lack of building materials means that people whose homes were flattened in the bombing of the last war are still living under tarpaulin and corrugated iron.
During the summer, it's so hot, we live like we are dead. During the winter, the children cry because of the cold. In our old house, we had water and electricity. We had no problems then.
There is some rebuilding going on, but it doesn't provide enough work to make any impact on an unemployment rate of 45%. Gaza's young people have grown up in isolation and grown used to a lack of opportunity. There's plenty of bravado amongst the guns at the summer camp, but there's also an absence of hope. Geraint Vincent, News at 10, Gaza.
Yeah, that's going on.
Yeah, I'll tell you this, though. I mean, the central thesis of that piece and many pieces like it, quite frankly, is that, this is terrorism is a function of economics, and the poor people are, under siege, et cetera, et cetera. Right. Number one, it's of their own making. They, like it or not, Israel turned over Gaza to an autonomous government many years ago. They decided they want Hamas in power. And there's no link between economics and their hatred. They have a base hatred for Jews everywhere, certainly for Israel, and they're dedicated to the destruction of the state of Israel. Doesn't matter if they were living like kings, like their leaders are, of course. They don't show you the houses that the Hamas leaders are living in on the beach, etc. The Hamas leaders don't send their own kids to commit suicide bombings. They live in life of luxury. And it's about hatred and anti-Semitism. It's not about economics.
No, 100%. 100%. It's been like that since day one. That's why there's never been any kind of serious peace deal made with Israel and the PA for that matter, after so many years. Even the offer given by former Prime Minister of Israel, Ehud Olmert.
Yep.
No response.
Sure, and Barack after them. They, if that's what they want, if they wanted, a so-called legitimate state, they would have had it. Unfortunately, frankly, there should not be
Right.
another state. I mean, they have it. They have plenty of states already, if that's what they want.
There was no reason for Jordan to join the war against Israel in 1967.
Yeah.
And they controlled
hatred.
the territory, Judea and Samaria.
Yeah.
They went to war. What did they want in 1967? Obviously, they wanted to reach Tel Aviv.
And for a short period of time, the world loved Israel, because the world unfortunately loves Jews when they're being beaten down and killed and that sort of thing. I'm sorry to say, but when Israel showed itself to be a powerful force and it stood up against those who hated it and those who sought to destroy it, again the world turned on. They don't like to see a strong Jew, it seems to me.
Right. In Toronto.
Hey, while you just sorry to interject real quick, you're talking about the mansions and exactly what you're saying. I thought we have just a quick little message from our sponsor, which is the next week's Lifestyles of the Rich and Heartless Palestinian Style. These are actually homes in the Palestinian territories that the leaders live in. They have Learjets, they have yachts on the water, and yet we don't see these photographs. Well, we do because we've searched them out. But certainly this isn't something that when you show the poor, poverty-stricken 45% unemployment rate, well, this is why they're unemployed, because they're abused by their own people. Anyway, back to you guys.
Gary, that's going to be a vitally important show. It gets absolutely no coverage. If you drive around, you can see these mansions. You take your life into your hands to do it, but you can see these mansions. I also want to point out, you've got some terrific comments in the chat group on the side. Your audience is very savvy, I see.
Mm-hmm. And also, so we encourage people, if you have any questions, post them online, comments, post them online. We'll try and address them, but also we do have phone lines. So if you want to call the show, if you have a comment or a question, no problem. The number is 647-510-5535. Call. We'll take your call. We want to hear from you. So David, let me ask you. So in Toronto, the CEO responsible for the Scotiabank Arena that Roger Waters says he's going to be performing in, I believe, the summer of 2022. It's a Jewish man, Larry Tenenbaum. I've encouraged people to send letters to him. I've sent letters to him, to his organization, giving him links, information about Roger Waters, and asking him to not allow him to use the platform of Scotiabank Arena. Now, you have a little bit of experience at the Major League Baseball. They've canceled Roger Waters and I think American Express, and there's others that you could draw our attention to. But what does it take to convince someone like Larry Tenenbaum to drop Roger Waters? I mean, he's a billionaire, so
I think it's got to be. I think a letter writing, email campaign, publicizing it in the media to the extent the media will cover it. You got to make it painful. And they have to understand the issues. It's got to be chapter and verse. It's not hard with a guy like Roger Waters because he says so many hateful things, so many places, and you can point them in the direction of the Major League Baseball, of other rockers, of American Express, as you say. The ADL has put out tremendous statements against him. Simon Wiesenthal Center, it's not a political group. They have a number of his speeches and things that he said. And, you know, one of the most hateful things Waters does is he tries to turn on Jews, Nazi comparisons. He compares them to Goebbels and Nazi treatment, that sort of thing, because he knows it's particularly hurtful. But interestingly, I saw that even a German public television network banned Roger Waters. They said, we don't want to be a part of any of this sort of thing. It's true, as you know, one of your listeners, Valentine, is writing in, it is true that it's very difficult to mobilize the media because when it's an issue on the left, they say, oh, well, you know, free speech and all that. But it's true. I say Waters has the right to say what he's saying and to do what he's doing, not if he's funding a terrorist organization or in any way providing material support, but his hateful message should be out there so that we know that it's out there. On the other hand, we have, I'd say, an obligation to speak out against it and to take action to the extent we can. And that action should hit him in the pocketbook and every place else. We have to do a better job of mobilizing on our side. You know, the hate squad, AOC or Tlaib or Omar, any of them comes out with a statement and all of a sudden it becomes a movement and, you know, person's finished. It snowballs and so on. We have to, and it's based on lies often, but we have to learn how to use exposure, public exposure, to shame people to be involved in any way with Roger Waters. There, you know, you're making some progress with Ben & Jerry's and Unilever. It has hit Unilever in the pocketbook, and here you've actually mobilized some states to divest. That's very important. The Roger Waters thing should be an easy target, I think, and a very fair target. And the more we educate about his message and the lie that it reflects, the better off we all are.
No, absolutely. There's no question about it. And the amount of information that we have at our fingertips right now, as recent as this afternoon even, of who he's with, who he's associated with, statements he's making, statements that his buddies are making, links to the PFLP terror groups. I mean, all that has to get out there and it has to be really publicized in a big way. That's what we're trying to do.
That's right. Very important.
I think there's another video that our doctor in the studio has. One other thing is that, you know, like they're so, you know, when he goes on, Roger Waters goes on about the Balfour Declaration and he outright lies about it in order to spread anti-Semitism. But are we supposed to forget about the Mufti of Jerusalem, who collaborated with Adolf Hitler? I mean, there's a lot of history there, and there's there was a movement there to support Nazi Germany, and there's documentation that the Mufti was supportive of the extermination camps.
100% right. We've already forgotten that the PLO supported Saddam Hussein, and that's not long ago.
Right.
There's this romanticism that people paint. It's, you know, an absolute lie. Yeah, it's a crazy phenomenon, but I don't know. I am encouraged by what's happened with Unilever now, and I think that if we can publicize the tour schedule and the ties to the PFLP and some of his own statements, people should be shamed against in any way supporting Waters' concert. Let him crawl back under his rock.
No, absolutely, and maybe even the immigration department should be informed also. In the United States and in Canada also about his upcoming tours because of the associations now with his circle with the PFLP. So, I mean, the PFLP is listed in the United States. It's listed also in Canada as terror organization, and you just can't have it. Now, you just can't start soliciting support for it. As recent as May, when there was the not a complete war, but the battle with Hamas in May, we saw an upsurge in anti-Semitic attacks all over North America, also in Europe as well, in England too. Jews being attacked everywhere, in restaurants, patios, synagogues were attacked, violence in the streets by the BDS. And that these rallies that Roger Waters wants to have in various arenas and stadiums That's exactly how I see it. You're going to be playing some songs, and at the same time, you're going to be inciting people against Jews.
That's right. Alan Skorsky wrote in just, I saw that people forget about the PLO because they transformed into the PA. Of course, the PLO is still, an entity. But no, he's right. It's part of this, cleansing act, I suppose. But the thing about it is, we unfortunately legitimize them. You see it again with this government that's come in now. We're making the same mistakes over and over and over again without getting any kind of promise in return. Not that a promise would be worth anything. We're talking now about opening a consulate in Jerusalem for the PA, PLO. I mean, it's absurd. Every time we legitimize them, there's more violence, and they get emboldened, and they have no reason to become reasonable. We said we were going to require them to stop funding terrorists with the Martyr Fund. They continue to do it. And then people like Roger Waters take something where there's a little bit of truth. There is some training that goes on, for example, between Israeli security experts and American police forces. Roger Waters, though, says, oh, you see, Israeli soldiers are training American police to kill African Americans. There's absolutely zero truth to any of that. But, people say, oh, well, I do see there was a training coordination program. Maybe that's what Waters is talking about. Maybe it's true. It's disgusting.
I saw that video where he went on. He was interviewed by Al Jazeera.
Yeah.
Wait, it was either Al Jazeera or it was Press TV from Iran. One or the other.
Yeah.
Both the same.
He's done it a number of times, by the way.
Right. And on the interview, he was, that's exactly what he said, that Israeli police are training American police to kill blacks. He said it.
Yep.
It's incredible.
That's right. Yeah.
So he accuses Israel of training Americans to kill blacks. He accuses Israel of committing genocide. Anyone who believes him for what he says is going to come out hating Jews.
100% right. And maybe even worse than hating. I'm representing now, just started representing family of a young man in New York who was attacked and beaten up brutally by some Arabs in Times Square. And I think that, quite frankly, it's not a stretch to say, I think Wiesenthal Center said so, ADL said so, there's a direct link between the anti-Semitic rhetoric from the hate squad and these attacks. And I intend to, allege those things in the lawsuit that we're going to bring against the attackers. I think there's a direct link. They're very flipped with their words. And then, AOC is the first one to scream bloody murder if she says something and gets some pushback. She says, oh, people are attacking me, my life is in danger, and so on, after she's just, said horrible, spewing, hate-filled, anti-Semitic, racist, vicious words.
Absolutely. I've never seen the level of anti-Semitism like I see it today.
Yeah. But and in Congress, it's particularly scary because they do seem to be intimidating people. They call themselves, the progressives. I call them the regressives. There's nothing progressive about developing this kind of hate and trying to sideline Jews and that sort of thing. It's the antithesis of progressivism.
I think you're correct using the a lesson from going after Ben & Jerry's and Unilever. And I think that on the issue of Roger Waters, it's just been announced his tour plans and all that, we need to get all of our allies, everyone involved in the pro-Israel community who supports, and there's a lot of evangelical groups as well that are very supportive of Christians United for Israel, and I could list other ones. So we have to tap into all these different groups and be unified in targeting this vicious anti-Semite wherever he's going to be planning to appear.
You need to have, I think, someone from Kufi on your show. I just went to a speech this Pastor Hagee made.
Right.
I've never seen anybody like this, as such a strong advocate for Israel. And he said he's got 10 million members. And I thought that their end game was, when Mashiach comes, sort of they get Jerusalem. He said, absolutely not. We've heard that criticism. I fought back against it. We believe that when the Messiah comes, the land of Israel is eternally the Jews, he said. And he said, and I mean 300,000 square miles, not the 8,500 square miles they have.
He's amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing.
He's amazing. And he has a support base also in Canada as well. At the there's a Christians United for Israel here as well. It's incredible. I know these people. They're fabulous people. And Donna Holbrook, she's involved with them. And it's incredible the work they do. They're there for us. They're allies, and we have to work with them.
You know, Alan Skorsky asked the question after yesterday's election, which the Republicans made some inroads. Do we think that the hate squad will be weakened at all? You would think logically, if you were a member of the Democratic Party and you wanted to solidify your party's base, you'd say, listen, we've got to marginalize these folks. We're letting them lead us around, by the nose. It's terrible. We have to put a stop to it. I'm representing the Democratic Party in a case right now, but I don't have their ear in that sense, and they can do whatever they want. But it's terrible for the country. I wish that these folks had never been elected to Congress, but they come from areas now that are going to kind of keep reelecting people like that. We had one from the Atlanta area, Cynthia McKinney, a virulent anti-Semite, but she was basically drummed out of Congress. She was beaten by a very responsible candidate eventually, and although they still have a highway named after her and her father here, all that. But I don't know, it used to be a day when we didn't put up with this stuff and people spoke out against it, but they're intimidated now because there's social media. AOC's got a big following. Can you imagine in the past ever thinking someone who made the kind of blatant anti-Semitic comments that Ilhan Omar has made without any apology for them, really, that person would still be sitting in Congress, and other people who do much lesser things are canceled completely from public life?
No, 100%. I think what's going on is that like at one time, the American Jewish community was extremely strong and a lot more unified than it is today. And in Israel, the Jewish identity seemed to be weak years ago. That whole situation has changed. In Israel, Jewish identity is extremely strong, and the Jewish demographics in Israel is on a high. Birth rate is very high up there. It's in the positives. It's great. And with religious Jews, it's even stronger in Israel. So all across the board, all Jews in Israel, positive birth rate. In the United States, the American Jewish community, negative. It's in the negatives. And also it's an aging population. So it's in the negatives. It's an aging population. And, there are certain people that are irreplaceable, like Sheldon Adelson, may he rest in peace, fabulous supporter of Israel, fabulous Jew.
Favorite target of Roger Waters, by the way. He gives speech after
Yes.
speech lambasting Sheldon Adelson.
Yes.
By the way, I hate to interrupt you. I got to tell you, the political IQ of your listeners is just unbelievable. It's ridiculous. I'm looking at these comments. I mean, these folks are on top of all of the issues. You've got an entire army out there of people who can make a difference. I see. It's
Right.
amazing.
Well, that's what we have to do, and we have to make a difference. And I've been involved in fighting against anti-Semitism for a long time. Been involved years ago in tracking down Nazi war criminals who escaped punishment and made testimony. In fact, at the Duchesne Commission, evidence about Nazi war criminals, dealt with them in a lot of ways, exposed where they lived and all the documentation also, and worked on that front. Been very involved in fighting against those who promote Holocaust denial, Ernst Zundel. And this is another chapter in my life to fight against BDS anti-Semitism. That's from the Samadon shared that message, PFLP message to the IRGC. We fought with them against our enemy Israel, and we will fight with them against their enemy USA.
نحن ننظر للجمهورية الإسلامية في إيران ولسماحة قائد الثورة الإسلامية آية الله عليه خامنئي حفظه الله ولإخوتنا ورفاقنا وأحبائنا في الحكومة والشعب الإيراني وفي الحرس الثقافي. نحن ننظر الجمهورية الإسلامية في إيران وليس أكتاف مقاتليه إلى جوار أكتاف مقاتلين عندما نصل إلى القدس، وهذا قريب. بصراحة نحن نقول هؤلاء رفاقنا أصدقاؤنا.
And although obviously most of us listening don't
والمصير
know what they're
المشترك.
saying, this basically summarizes it. I mean, people who hate Israel don't realize all these groups hate America as much as they hate Israel.
Unfortunately, we have a number of people in America who hate America as much as they hate Israel.
Right. So in effect, the involvement with the BDS and people that Roger Waters is working with and organizations that he's working with that support the PFLP and their various front organizations, that's who they're supporting. That's who they're supporting. And it's anti-American, and that's another direction that we should launch our campaign, that not only are you standing up against anti-Semitism and hate and lies and distortions, but also we're standing up against organizations that are anti-West to the core, to the
100%,
core.
100% right. By the way, I think if we could show any link between this Waters tour and any PFLP associated group, that would be the key, which the State Department couldn't refuse to, get involved, and then we can mobilize public support also.
Good. Okay. Well, we're going to work on that, and we're going to show all his supporters it's all there.
Yeah, you hate to dignify the guy by highlighting what he's doing, but I think it's important in this case. He's not going away if we're just quiet. So.
Right. No, 100%. No, it's very serious and it's very dangerous. And like I said, in May we saw that upsurge in anti-Semitic attacks. It's going to continue. And they're just going to stir the pot and go after the Jews, and let's go after the Jews. Remember in England, in London, England, during the when there was BDS rallies and protests and violence against Jews, they actually had a car rally where they were announcing on a loudspeaker from their cars, "Let's rape Jewish women." It's unbelievable. That's the mentality that we're fighting against. Okay, so David, I want to thank you for joining us. It's been a pleasure. Final words before we sign off, David.
I don't know. It's very, very critically important work that you're doing. I have to say, you've got to continue to expose a guy like Roger Waters, use his own words. We don't have to make up anything. It's important to educate the public and for the public to get interested. I'd like to see, some fraction of the people who came out to support World Series game get involved in issues like this that are important to our existence.
100%, 100%. Listen, we'll do that, and I'll be sending you have information, but I'll be sending you whatever information that I come across, so you could work on your level and with your contacts to make a difference.
Great. Thanks so much. Great show as always.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Take care.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Doc. Okay.
Terrific. Again, if people could please share this on their various platforms, we'll reach a lot more people. This is a serious matter. We're talking about anti-Semitic terrorists, that network. We have to stand up to it. And we have to stand up now. We don't have any choice. We actually have no choice. That's the truth of the matter. Whether you want to hide, didn't work so well when the Nazis came to power in Nazi Germany. Couldn't hide from it. Couldn't hide from it. You got to stand up now. You got to fight now. That's exactly what it's going to be. Does our doctor in the studio have a song that we're going to put on?
I think right before a song, I think something that we don't emphasize enough, particularly since we know there's such a large faction of Jews in American Canada who don't appreciate what they have in the country of Israel. So I'm going to show a quick little video just talking about just not only for the non-Jews to appreciate this, but we need to get together, all the Jews, because if we get together, there are 15 million of us. If it's only us kind of conservative, proactive Zionists, that's one of the problems. So here's a quick little video just about Jews, not only for Jews, but for non-Jews. And then I'll play, I think what we'll do, just because of the nature of today, is I'll close again with Hatikva. But first, this I think is worth viewing.
Okay.
I'm that always writing Jew, that footnote citing Jew, that academic Jew, scholar Jew, that thinking Jew, and let me tell you something Jew. Worker Jew, white collar Jew, that tend the flock and herder Jew, that calloused foot and hand Jew, that roam the barren sands Jew, that tills and works the land Jew, that old Jew, new Jew, that makes the desert grow Jew, that always trying to make things just a little better Jew. At the same time, don't mind if I'm a self-centered Jew. I'm that persistent, sweated out Jew, that I made it big because I earned it Jew, that give me what I want because I know that I deserve it Jew, that arrogant Jew, that humble Jew, that whatever Jew I'm in the mood to be Jew, just like you, that oh yes, I'm just getting started Jew. I'm that Israeli Jew, that Caribbean Jew, that English, Indian, Sephardic Jew, that Ashkenazi, blonde and blue-eyed, no I'm not a Shiksa Jew, New York Jew, LA Jew, Australia and Ukraine Jew, that Russian, South African, Ethiopian and French, je suis juif Jew, that proud of being Jewish Jew, that Jesus Jew, Judas Jew, that don't know why I'm still being persecuted Jew, scapegoat Jew, that whenever we're murdered, you probably think we had it coming Jew, but still, not afraid to wear my Star of David, Am Yisrael Chai Jew. I'm that feeling the world has gone mad, and damn it, I want to get off Jew. That way too much horror in the news everywhere I turn Jew. That fed up with ISIS beheading Christians, knife-wielding, suicide-bombing lunatics Jew. That disgusted by Boko Haram, Boston Marathon, Lynn Cafe, Pakistani schoolchildren killers, and I've had enough of radical Islam to last me a lifetime Jew. That they're killing so many of their own, but somehow we're blamed for that too, Jew. That wake-up world Jew. And that you don't want to hear this, but I don't give a damn what you think, Jew. That you're just going to have to deal with it, Jew. That bullied in high school, Jew, because I was rocking a yarmulke, Jew. That standing up to you, Jew. That took to the hand, Jew. And that Iron Dome cheering fan club, where were you when the missiles were raining down on Tel Aviv, Jew? That just shalom motherfuckered you off my Facebook page, Jew. That sick of your double standards, Jew. That UN today equals useless nations to me, Jew. That will fight it out if you have a problem with me, Jew. And yet, I'm that desperately wanting to live side by side in peace with you, Jew. That get to know me, and you'll see we're not so bad like they make us out to be, Jew. Bingo. I'm that who knew, Jew. I'm that needing to explain, Jew. That let's figure it out together, Jew. That questioning, Jew. The never ever just one answer Jew, that contemplative Jew, that wild-haired genius Jew, that psychoanalytical and let me tell you something about you and your mother Jew, that never claimed to be perfect Jew. I'm that shelf-sagging with Nobel Prizes Jew, that brilliant scientist Jew, that astronaut Jew, that inventor of something that's part of your everyday life but you don't even know it Jew. But I'm also that let's laugh it up Jew, that I'm on a boat and it's good to be the king Jew. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I'm the new rules, in your face, butt-kicking, sassy, sexy, smart Wonder Woman Jew. That Harvard actress, director, and Princess Leia's mother all rolled into one Jew. That fiddler on the roof, always performing, but damn, I'm gone too soon, Jew. And that lox and bagel noshing Jew. That falafel and hummus eating Jew. That couscous, schnitzel, latkes, and matzo ball soup Jew. And that only liberal democracy in the Middle East Jew. And that became a refugee when my ancestors were kicked out of Arab lands Jew. And that political Jew, that activist Jew, that gay Jew and female rabbi Jew, that eat a Big Mac, but I won't touch bacon Jew, that looking for the truth forever wandering Jew, that just want to get married under a chuppah and break a glass onto my heel Jew, and that Merry Christmas, Ramadan Kareem, have a good whatever you're celebrating Jew, and that Hindu high-fiving, Sikh fist-bumping, Christian-loving, Muslim friend-having, Buddhist and Baha'i, I'd love to get to know you better Jew, and that religious Jew, that secular-loving my heritage Jew, that brother-in-arms Jew, hero Jew, soldier turned olive branch holding Jew, that put 3 bullets in my back, but you won't kill my dream Jew, that yearning for peace, and I've never been to Israel, but I'll get there someday, because it's my homeland Jew, that almost 6,000 years, and I'm still standing Jew, that Hatikva singing with a tear in my eye Jew. and that won't apologize for surviving Jew, that fighting for my rights Jew, that number 1 and number 6 million and every number in between Jew, that learned from what happened to us in the Holocaust Jew, that never, ever again Jew. And that wish there were more of us Jew, that creative Jew, business funk and folk Jew, that dancer Jew, painter Jew, that Taylor Baker wedding singer Jew, that neurotic Jew, part Jew, let love rule, and wannabe honorary Jew. And that lucky father Jew, that husband to a wonderful woman Jew, that son to loving parents who worked hard so I would be happy Jew, that grandson to those who suffered so we would just make it Jew, that thanks to them, I've got my whole life ahead of me Jew. And that everything's got a reason for being, and I'll keep looking for the answer Jew, that writing this to all my Jewish brothers and sisters Jew, and to those who aren't Jewish, but get this and show me love, I'm that writing this to you with utmost respect Jew. I'm that believer that we're going to be okay because there's no other choice Jew, that hang in there and keep your head up Jew, that human dignity will prevail and the world is made up of decent people Jew, and that believer that the decent people will win in the end Jew. Not a wishful thinking Jew, just true Jew.
Very good. Very good composition.
I thought you'd enjoy that. While you're saying your final words, not final words, but final words for tonight. That sounded a little too terminal. And then I'll put on Hatikva, and then we'll see everybody next week, okay?
We're actually having another, on Sunday, where we're talking about the vision of what is a Jewish government. We covered that last Sunday. It was an interesting class. We'll be discussing it again this Sunday with Baruch Ben Yosef. But here's our song. And thank you everyone for joining us. And we have to fight. We will.
נפש יהודי הומייה ותן מזרח קדימה עין לציון צופיה עוד לא אבדה תקוותנו שנות אלפיים להיות עם חופשי בארצנו ארץ ציון ירושלים להיות עם חופשי בארצנו ארץ ציון הגואל אותי המלאך הגואל אותי מכל רע לילה לילה טוב חיבוק של ירח כוכב מנשק את מצחך
Shalom Aleichem.